UFC Noche betting and DraftKings breakdown. We have 11 fights this Saturday. I'm Jon Kelly. Let's hear the picks. We're going to get things started in the women's strawweight division as Josephine Knudsen comes in as a minus 485 favorite. The comeback on Marnik Man is plus 370. And Josephine Knudsen, you guys might recognize that name if you've watched my Dana White's Contender Series breakdowns each and every week on this channel. I actually talked about her just a couple weeks ago because she fought on this season of Contender Series. She got the win against Isis Verbeek, and it ended up coming by way of decision, but she did have a lot of success in that fight, landed a big head kick as well. But she typically is more of a decision fighter, a well-rounded fighter, fights out of All Stars Gym in Sweden, a close friend of Khamzat Chimaev, and she just seems to have a pretty solid skill set. I did think she was UFC ready, didn't end up getting the contract, but now she's here just a couple weeks later and really getting a nice matchup against Marnik Man, who's also fought on Contender Series, not this year, but in the past, and she actually was knocked out by Bruna Brazil in the second round when she fought on Contender Series, but she's a 6-1 prospect. She's previously fought over an LFA as well. I would say her best asset is really just her toughness. She wants to move forward, make it dirty, fight you in the clinch, hold you up against the fence, and use her wrestling. I just don't think she's going to have success in any of those areas against Knudsen, who's just better than her, in the clinch, up against the fence, a better grappler as well, and a much better striker. I think that's going to play itself out across this fight, and I do think it takes 15 minutes. But when it comes to DraftKings, she's 9,500 on the Knudsen side, second most expensive fighter on the slate. I just think there's better fights to target in that price range. If you're going to spend up, I like Rosas Jr. better. I like Charlie Campbell better. I like multiple fighters better. Lupi Godinez. We'll talk about all these in a bit, but I just think you don't have to get cute here. So even though I think Knudsen wins, I'm likely just going to full fade her on DraftKings. The official pick is going to be Knudsen by decision. Which brings us to our next fight, and I mentioned Charlie Campbell as a potential spend-up option. He's a minus 400 favorite here. The comeback on Alex Reyes is plus 300, and this one is going to keep climbing until fight night because Charlie Campbell's just a much better fighter here. He's getting a cupcake matchup, and you see it in the betting line, but I just really expect to see a knockout finish here by Charlie Campbell. He's getting, a cupcake matchup on Alex Reyes, who hasn't fought in over 6 years. The last time this guy fought was back in 2017, where he got knocked out by Mike Perry. So I just don't think this guy is very good, even when he was fresh. Most of his wins came by first round against low-level talent on the regional scene. I don't think he's going to have much success in the striking or the grappling, which is typically where you need to take advantage of a guy like Charlie Campbell. Campbell previously fought over an LFA, very good striker, very powerful as well. And he previously fought on Contender Series against Chris Duncan, where he was having success early in the fight, touching him up, and ended up getting hit with a power shot and getting knocked out. But I think you either have to knock this guy out cold or take advantage of his defensive grappling issues. I don't think Reyes is going to be able to do either of those things. I'm expecting an early finish by Campbell. Campbell by TKO is the official pick, and he's a strong target on DraftKings. Which brings us to our next fight as Tracy Cortez comes in as a small favorite here at minus 120 with Jasmine Jasudavicius on the comeback at plus 100. And this is one where I do expect it to be a competitive fight, but I kind of think that more of the upside, or nearly all of the upside, like if either fighter looks like a sizable favorite, I think that comes on the Jasudavicius side, because Tracy Cortez, at this point, we know what she's going to bring to the table. She's got 4 straight wins in the UFC, and she basically does the same thing in all of those fights. She has a decent boxing style, but she needs to go to her wrestling, and when she's able to get the takedown, she has good control on the mat. That's typically how she wins her fights. Now, I think on the feet, Jasudavicius is going to be the better striker. I think she's going to be the more powerful striker, the more aggressive striker as well. And Cortez has struggled at times defensively, but she's been able to fall back on her wrestling. I'm just not convinced that the takedowns are going to come as easily as they have in some of her previous matchup, like Melissa Gatto, who I think was a better striker. The problem is Gatto's willing to give up the takedowns and play jiu-jitsu off her back. I don't think Jasmine's going to do that here. We've seen Jasmine improve from fight to fight. Even her last matchup against Miranda Maverick, where some people thought Maverick would have some success in the grappling realm, and I did as well. It just wasn't the case. Jasmine is very strong in the clinch. That's where I think this fight could come down to, is those clinch battles. I'm going to go with the fighter who's a little bit bigger, more physical in the clinch, and I'm not convinced that Cortez is going to be able to get those takedowns, and that's basically the only way that she wins here. I think Jasmine has more path to victory, and I think she's just the better fighter, more improving fighter at this stage. So I'm going to go with Jasmine here to get her hand raised. I think it comes by decision. Next fight up in the flyweight division. This is my favorite fight to target on the card. We have Edgar Chairez, a minus 250 favorite. The comeback on Daniel Lacerda is plus 205. And this is one where I would just be shocked if the winner of this fight doesn't score very well. I plan to target one of these fighters in just about every lineup that I make this weekend. And the reason being is just because I think this ends in the first round, or at least under 1.5 rounds, at such a high clip where I'm going all in at this point. Like Edgar Chairez, all of his wins have come inside the distance. When he does lose, it typically comes by finish. I know his last 2 losses came by decision, but there were some pretty sweaty moments in those fights as well. And then on the flip side, Lacerda, we know what he brings to the table. This guy is getting a 5th fight in the UFC despite not booking a win, and that's because of his exciting fighting style. Like, you have these guys on Twitter like, man, why is this guy getting another fight? This is so stupid. He sucks. It's because he's exciting. Like, nobody wants to see somebody hug someone against the cage or lay on them for 15 minutes. Lacerda is going to come at you like a Terrence McKinney for 3-4 minutes, as long as that gas tank is there, and he's going to throw everything in the kitchen sink at you, whether it's spinning wheel kicks, trying to take your head off, some slick submission attempts as well. And that's his path to victory. He's got to catch you early. If he doesn't, he's going to fade and start to wilt and get himself finished. So that's why I think the fight is going to end in a finish at a very high clip. One thing I'll say is I'm really hoping that the narrative from the field is that, like, Lacerda's just a complete bum. He can't win now, because previously he was a popular underdog to target, and I think he'll still get some ownership. But I'm just hoping that the field is like just out on this guy finally after burning the field 4 different times now and getting himself finished. I know Chairez is going to come with a ton of ownership. I'm just hoping that the ownership is kind of held in check on the Lacerda side, because I want to be overweight to both sides on DraftKings. But the official pick is going to be Chairez by TKO. I think that's more likely, but I would not put it past Lacerda getting a first round finish. I know Chairez was able to fend off submissions from Tatsuro Taira and Clayton Carpenter when he fought on Contender Series, but those are guys with actual process when it comes to their grappling. They're not like meme submission artists like a Daniel Lacerda. So just keep that in mind, that I would not be shocked to see Lacerda pull off something here, but the official pick is going to be Chairez by TKO. I'm going to be overweight to both sides on DraftKings. Next fight up in the middleweight division, we have Roman Kopylov, a minus 375 favorite. The comeback on Josh Fremd is plus 280. And we'll start on the Kopylov side. He's now on a 3-fight win streak, all 3 wins coming by way of knockout. And we've seen him really start to come into his own. You know, previously on the regional scene, he had a ton of first round knockouts. We kind of worried about his cardio, worried about his defensive grappling, where early on in the UFC, some guys were able to take advantage of that. But he's really improved in multiple areas. You see it in the takedown defense over his last couple fights, and really the striking, I think, has improved as well. He just mixes it up a lot better, and he carries his power for multiple rounds. I know he's looked tired at times, but he is going to carry that power. He's got multiple finishes in fights that have gotten extended, and I just think he's going to be the much better striker here against Josh Fremd, who's made us a decent amount of money in the past, but I just don't think this is the spot for him. I think it's a pretty brutal matchup. Fremd is very strong in the clinch. He's got nasty knees and elbows in the clinch. He's got good calf kicks as well, but I think he's going to struggle defensively. This guy is kind of wide open, you know, for particularly that head kick of Kopylov and the body kick. I think those are going to be there all day, and I think Fremd has been able to lean on that high school wrestling background in the past against guys like Dumas, where he's clearly going to have a grappling advantage. I'd be kind of surprised if he's even able to get Kopylov down here. So I think it's going to play out on the feet. I think Kopylov's going to be landing more and landing more effectively. So I think Kopylov probably breaks him down the stretch. We're going Kopylov by TKO. That's the official pick. Next fight up, we have another women's strawweight matchup as Lupi Godinez comes in as a minus 440 favorite. The comeback on Elise Reed is plus 340. And this is one where I clearly favor the Lupi Godinez side. I know that her fight IQ has been an issue in the past, but I really don't think it matters in this spot. I expect her to be the better striker, the better boxer. She wants to get inside, fight in the phone booth, hold you up against the cage, and peel you to the ground. She averages over 3 takedowns per 15 minutes, and I think they're gonna come easy against Elise Reed, who's basically just a one-dimensional kickboxer, and she's not even that good as a kickboxer. Like, I don't even think if she gets the ideal fight here, I don't even think she wins that fight. and I don't think she's going to get that fight because she only defends takedowns at 50%. When she is taken down, she typically struggles to work back to her feet or look for any type of sweeps or reversals. I think Godinez, the takedowns come easy, they come often, and she finds a finish on the mat. We're going Godinez by submission. That's the official pick. Next fight up, we have Fernando Padilla, a minus 250 favorite. The comeback on Kyle Nelson is plus 205. And Padilla made his UFC debut on short notice against Julian Erosa and won by knockout in the very first round. And he's a guy that's pretty well-rounded. He's a good striker, very aggressive, and does have a ton of power. He's primarily looking to counter you with a big shot, but we saw him get really aggressive when he had Erosa on the ropes. And I think that speaks to just his experience, because he did have a ton of fights on the regional scene. He fought decent competition, fought over an LFA as well. And he's also got some sneaky submission upside. And against a guy like Kyle Nelson, who we've seen kind of try to mix in the wrestling at times, leaves his neck out there, I would not be surprised to see Padilla, snatch up a neck here. I think Padilla's a better striker as well. Kyle Nelson historically is kind of like an early knockout or bust type of guy. I know he did win a decision in his last fight against Blake Bilder, and I think that really saved his job, to be honest with you. And he was just hurting Bilder a bunch. So he does still have power, but he also still, kind of fades as the fight goes on. I know it looked a little bit better in that last fight, but that was partly because Bilder was hurt and kind of fading as well. So I just think in this matchup, I'm going to favor the Padilla side. I think Kyle Nelson would probably have to hurt him early and often, and I just don't think he's going to be able to do that. Padilla's very durable, never been finished in his career, and I just think he's got multiple paths to finding a finish here. He's not the best minute winner, but I do think the finish comes. We're going Padilla by TKO. That's the official pick. Next fight up, we have Daniel Zellhuber, a minus 285 favorite, with Christos Giagos on the comeback at plus 235. And I'll just officially say it, I'm back in on the Golden Boy. I know we've had our issues in the past. He burned one of the round table parlays. I called him the Toilet Boy instead of the Golden Boy. He's got his nickname back because I backed him a little bit against Lando Venata in that last fight. So he's back in good graces here and back with a good matchup in this fight against a guy who I just think is untrustworthy in Christos Giagos. I know he's coming off a first round knockout victory. He does have power early in fights, but he's not going to put a ton of volume out there, not really going to give you a ton to think about on the feet, but he is a decent grappler. He can land takedowns. He's going to go to that wrestling, averages over 3 takedowns per 15 minutes, but he constantly puts himself in bad spots in those grappling exchanges, and we know we can't trust the cardio. Like, the dude always tends to fade and typically gets himself finished. He's been finished in 7 of his 10 professional losses, 5 times by submission, and I know people are probably expecting more of a TKO victory if Zellhuber were to win. I actually think we could see a submission here. Zellhuber has some sneaky submission upside. He's a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he's got like a nice guillotine, nice front choke series. I could see Giagos just giving something up. This dude constantly does that, especially if he starts to fade. So I'm going to be looking to target Zellhuber like round 2, round 3 props, maybe a round 2 sub, round 2, 3 sub at big numbers. So we'll see what we end up getting in terms of the market, but I do think Zellhuber breaks him down the stretch here and gets his hand raised. We're going Zellhuber by submission. That's the official pick. Next fight up in the bantamweight division, they have my guy Raul Rosas Jr., a minus 750 favorite. The comeback on Terrence Mitchell is plus 525. And the hype train on Raul Rosas Jr. was somewhat derailed in his UFC debut. He suffered his first career loss at the hands of Christian Rodriguez, but that was a really tough debut. Christian Rodriguez, good takedown defense, really made Rosas Jr. work very hard early in that fight to get the takedowns and was constantly just working back to his feet, beating him in terms of when it played out in the striking realm. And I just don't think Terrence Mitchell is going to be able to do any of those things. Terrence Mitchell does have power early in fights, but he's always struggled in terms of defensively grappling. I think the takedowns are going to come early. I think they're going to come often. And I think Rosas Jr. is just going to cut through this kid on the mat and end up getting a first round submission. So we're going Rosas Jr. by first round submission. That's going to be the official pick, and he's one of the best spend up on DraftKings. I don't know if he's the very best because he is the most expensive, so you'll have to think about that when we do have other good fighters to target like Lupe Godinez, Charlie Campbell, and a couple others in there, but he is certainly going to be a heavy target for me on DraftKings because I do think that first round finish is very likely this weekend. Which brings us to our co-main event as Jack Della Maddalena comes in as a minus 148 favorite. The comeback on Kevin Holland is plus 124, and this seems to be the fight that I think the most people are split on in our industry, in our little MMA bubble. And I get why, because I do expect it to be a pretty competitive fight here. I could see the argument for both sides. We'll start on the Della Maddalena side. This dude is an excellent striker. I kind of underestimated him for sure coming off Contender Series. I thought his boxing was pretty good, but I thought there was holes, in terms of his defensive grappling. I thought he was a little bit too hittable on the feet, and I just underrated his power and his technical boxing ability. And we've seen him really blossom in the UFC so far with multiple first-round knockouts, even a first-round submission as well. And then, of course, the split decision victory in his most recent fight, where I think at least some of the hype kind of took a step back a little bit. Basil Hafiz came in on short notice, gave this dude everything he can handle, even took advantage of some of those defensive grappling holes, landed multiple takedowns, was able to control him for a little bit on the mat as well. I think this one's going to play out on the feet, so I'm not like putting too much stock into that. I don't expect Holland to wrestle a ton because he's never been the highest fight IQ guy. But even if he doesn't, like, throw out the grappling, if we expect a 15-minute kickboxing match, I think Holland's super live here, because typically you don't really beat Kevin Holland in the striking. I know Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, one of the best strikers in the welterweight division, was able to do that over 25 minutes, and it didn't end up getting that far, but he was able to do that. I just don't think many others will be able to do that. The way that you beat Kevin Holland is by taking him down, controlling him on the mat. That is the way that you beat him. If you're going to try to stand at range against this guy, I think he's going to give you problems. This is a guy that's very long for the division. He's going to be working with an 8-inch reach advantage. He's also very durable as well, and I think he uses his range very well. So he's going to manage that distance against a guy like Della Maddalena, who relies on that forward pressure, wants to get inside, start ripping the body. I don't think he's going to have as much opportunities to do that in this matchup, and I think we could see him struggle. He has been very hittable dating back to the regional scene. We've seen at times, like I mentioned in that Basil fight, in his last fight, we've seen the holes this guy can be had, and I think Kevin Holland's the best striker that he's fought to date. So I'll try one more time to fade the Jack Della Maddalena hype. I do think he's a very good prospect. I just think Kevin Holland's a very good test for him, and you're getting a little bit of plus money here. So I'm going to go with Kevin Holland to get his hand raised. I do like overs here, even better than a money line side. I really like the overs. I think this does go 15 minutes. I think both guys are tough. Both guys hang in there, and this one hits the judges' scorecards. We're going Holland by decision. That's the official pick. Which brings us to our main event in the women's flyweight division, as Valentina Shevchenko comes in as a minus 166 favorite. The comeback on current champion Alexa Grasso is plus 140. And I know Alexa Grasso was able to get that 4th round submission in the last fight against Shevchenko. I know she won. She looked much better than people expected. She was a large underdog in that spot. Certainly paid off the price tag. Obviously she won, but she also just looked a lot better than the betting odds suggest. Even prior to the finish, she looked good early in the fight, started to lose, but ended up getting the finish, as you know. But even though she won that fight, I kind of see it playing out like I expected the first fight to play out, and that's with Valentina's takedowns and control being the difference. And I think it was on its way to doing that prior to that mistake, which ended up getting her submitted. So even though I think Grasso is certainly live, and I think she's the better striker, I think she could be winning the boxing minutes, typically like she did in her last fight, the time these two squared off, because Shevchenko's just not a super high volume striker. She's very technically sound, but she's not going to blow you away in terms of the output. So that's where I think Grasso can get ahead. I just keep going back to the takedowns, because even though we've seen improvements with Grasso's defensive grappling and her offensive submission ability, like we saw in that first fight, I do still think the takedowns are going to be there, and I think Shevchenko can control her on the mat, and I think that's what's going to be the difference here. So I am going to side on the Shevchenko side. It should be a good fight. I'm going to target both sides on DraftKings, but the official pick is going to be Shevchenko by decision. I think she gets her belt back and new. And as always, guys, fightnumbers.com will have my DraftKings player rankings. It'll have my ownership projections as well, a bunch of other stuff. It's completely free. Check it out. I'll pin it in the comments. Thank you for watching. I definitely appreciate it. Best of luck, and we will see you guys next time.